I got a kasha over here based on something we were learning before. And I had mentioned at the end of the shir last week, or in the middle of the shir, that in Second Temple times, it's not like they had this midrashic idea that you'll get from, let's say, reading Medrash says and too many other midrashim, that the Avos were completely aware of the unfolding of history. Yodea Haya Moshe, that this and that, all everything. Yosef knew everything that was going to work out. Yosef cried over Binyamin because he foresaw the destruction of both temples, and Binyamin cried over Yosef because he saw the destruction of the Mishkan, which was in Yosef's territory. That's at least the Argirson. So those types of things are a little bit iffy from a history perspective. So I had said that there was this issue that eventually in Second Temple times, it's not like they're waiting for the Second Temple to be destroyed because they knew that won't be destroyed, then there'd be a third temple. I said that, they were aware of perhaps this issue that their temple had been destroyed. Why am I getting messages? Okay. They had been destroyed and they could potentially be destroyed again. So I'm looking for the exact daf over here. Someone pointed out something in Nazir where Rav Yosef makes an assumption that perhaps in Second Temple times they actually were aware that Od Me'at, the Second Temple, is to be destroyed and it's coming soon, and there will be a third temple built, and they should have realized this. So it says here. Here's it saying. Where was it? It was one of the shorter dafs. Okay. Okay, Tanai Nolad. Okay. It's what's a Tanai Nolad? And Pesach. Pesach for Hataras Nadarim. You ever get Hataras Nadarim? How does it work? Ideally, the Chacham or the Beis Din can find a way to release someone from his vow when they have to look. They have to look for what's called a Pesach, the legal opening for doing so. So usually say if you had known that being a Nazir meant, let's say, I don't know, there's a certain Pesach a person takes on to tzedakah or to give a korban of some sort, or some other neder. So they, if she's a woman and she's married, the husband can just abrogate what she had said. That's a different mechanism altogether. Hafaras Nadarim is the day of, and it's a special, I guess, privilege or right. Is it a right or a privilege or whatever it is? It's the purview of the husband to do so. Hataras Nadarim is saying it happened way afterwards. And it could happen even on Shabbos technically, whatever. There's all sorts of, you learn the Dharm, you'll see that there's a lot of halachas about it. And they talk about a person taking a Nazarite vow. A Nazir becomes a Nazir, but sometimes they could find an excuse. They could find an opening. And one of the things the Mishnah says is nolad. May or may not be an excuse. That's the discussion. What's nolad? Something that then happens. Normally when they find a Pethah, what is it? They find, well, you're aware of the fact that a Nazir means that you cannot go to the cemetery and you won't be drinking wine anymore, and you'll have to bring a whole slew of korbanos. You're taking this upon yourself, and no haircuts, by the way. And he could have said, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a Nazir, and I would definitely wouldn't have taken that vow." So that's the basic type of pethach they would find. This would incur a monetary obligation. Or did you know that if your husband didn't release you for this, I'd tell the woman, and it would result in you having to cut off your hair, or you won't be able to drink wine. So the Mishnah discusses, the husband saying, "Well, she's not going to be drinking wine. That's going to make her all disgusting." And there's a machlokas there. They say, the fact that she'll have to shave her head at the end, that's not so bad. And then they say, wait, the husband could say, "I don't want a bald wife." Most men would not like a woman who shaves their head. So these are the discussion in the Gemara there, in the, I think, the 5th parak of Nazir. So I have the Gemara right here, and the Mishnah talks about how some Nazirim found out that the temple had been destroyed. It's actually a historical instance. It says Nachum Hamadi, not Nachum Ish Gamzo, who was apparently lived later, but Nachum Hamadi. So I'll tell you what the Mishnah says. Misha Nadar ben Nazir v'ach laviat bemto matza'ash nigva imach lo nigva bemto Nazar ari is a Nazir. So it says he wanted to become a Nazir, and he had an animal to bring as his korban. Remember, that's an expense. To be a Nazir means you have to bring this korban. It says im ad shelo nigva bemto Nazar. If he had taken this Nazarite vow before his animal had been stolen, so he's a Nazir. He had an animal. He did it. Now the animal's gone. Now he's incurred a loss, but he'll have to, I guess, supply a different animal. If it was after his animal had been stolen, he thinks he has an animal in the pen outside his house. But overnight, some thieves came and took that. And this morning, he took the Nazarite vow, and he walks outside and he sees, oh man, sheep is gone. It's obvious that someone broke in here, and he sees tracks, leading away. Okay, gone. Many hours later, his sheep was gone. So he took the vow under the mistaken assumption that he would eventually have at least one of these korbanos that he's going to have to bring at the end. So now he could say, I didn't realize I would have to incur so much of an expense. So now that's a petah. Okay, so it says zo ta'uth ta'ah. So he says Eino Nazir. So he's not even a Nazir, technically speaking. So when he goes to the rabbi and asks him this question, he says, you don't even need hataras nedarim. Not even a petach. It's a mistaken assumption. So here's the kasha on what I said. Nachum Hamadi made a mistake here. What happened? Kisha nazirim min hagola umatzu beis hamikdash charif. Some Nazarites came from the diaspora and found the temple had been destroyed. Remember, they didn't have email. They didn't have what is it? The thing a mivrak nowadays. They didn't have telegrams back then, or telephones, or computers. So they didn't have instant communication. The word of the temple was getting destroyed, and obviously, when the Sanhedrin was at the temple and they were doing Kiddush HaChodesh, so they could send out men on horseback, or the fires on the mountains, whatever it was. They could try to get communication going. If the temple's been destroyed, it's not like they're going to send out official messengers. By the way, this is official communication from the Sanhedrin. The temple's been destroyed. Word got out, but it was kind of chaotic. So there's a similar story that Yishmael ben Nethaniah, who was the assassin of Gedaliah, when did he assassinate Gedaliah? On Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. And that was many weeks after the temple had been destroyed in Av. And it says that pilgrims were coming from Shilo at the time. And Yishmael found them along the way. They were on their way to Jerusalem. He told them, they just discovered that the temple had been destroyed. So these pilgrims around Rosh Hashanah time had just gotten the news by, showing up in the environs of Jerusalem and realizing, and they had shown the obvious signs of mourning for what had happened. So Nachum Hamadi received these Nazirim. By the way, Nazirus doesn't count in Chutz La'aretz. Person takes on Nazirus in Chutz La'aretz, he has to act like a Nazir, but the tenure that he has taken upon himself to be a Nazir, how long is it being a Nazir for? Stam Nazir is 30 days, that's the minimum, and he can take it on for however long he wants, whatever it is. So if he took on, let's say, a 2-month Nazirus, even if he had been a Nazir for 3 months in New York, the clock only starts when he gets to Israel. Okay, so they came for the Gola, and they found that the temple was destroyed. Amar Lahem Nachum Hamadi. The problem with the temple being destroyed for a Nazir is that it makes it a lot harder for him to complete his Nazirs. If a person, let's say in the past 2 millennia, took on Nazirus, so technically speaking, he was a Nazir for 30 days, and then he would just bring his korbanos and shave his head and go weiter in life. Then he could go back to drinking wine. And the Nazirim of the modern era, let's say the famous Nazir, so he was basically stuck as a Nazir until the temple would be rebuilt, and he'd have a chance to offer his korban. So all these Nazirim are really stuck. That no temple, they can't get any near there, it's all chaos. So now they're stuck as being Nazirim. They probably did not want to be Nazirim for the rest of their lives or for a long foreseeable future. Although there was movements, as we've seen in Judaism, in the ensuing decades to rebuild the temple. Right? That's a whole Bar Kokhba thing. That's began a major chance to rebuild the temple. Okay, so he told them, Ilu Vayisim Yodim Shabeis Hamikdash Charei Vayisim Nozrim. Says, if you had known, he's looking for a Pesach to do a Torah. If you had known that the temple had been destroyed, would you have taken upon yourselves this Nazarite vow? And Amru Lo, no, he said no. V'hitiron Nachum Hamadi. He gave him Ataras Nedarim based on this thing. If you had known, that's the Pesach. And they told him, Shabbat Davar Eitzel Chachamim. The matter reached the rest of the sages. Amru Kol Shenazar Ad Shalochari Beis Hamikdash Nazir Mishachara Beis Hamikdash Eno Nazir. If they had taken the vow while the temple was still standing and that was destroyed, so that would have been a Nazarite vow. It's only if they took the vow once the temple was destroyed. Depends what came first. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba Shetafuhu Rabbanon LeRabbi Eliezer. I guess they basically brainwashed him. That's basically they washed it out of him. That's why brainwash in Hebrew is shtof mo. Says heavy midato. They convinced him otherwise. The Gemara in ensuing says of a potmu t'nai nolad. Okay, ain't poskim nolad, of poskim t'nai nolad. Can't use nolad as a pesach, but you can use t'nai nolad. Well, what's the difference between t'nai nolad? Rashi says afilu hanohu denadru ad shaluch mikdash t'nai nolad. The nolad is, well, the Beis Hamikdash is now destroyed. So you can't say, well, now that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, if you had known this, no, because that's a nolad fact. They couldn't have known the Beis Hamikdash would be destroyed, because that's what the Gemara is assuming. Amri on ilu asa inish varlachon dechar Beis Hamikdash mihavin nidirutun. No, it says, yeah, nidiruton. If you had encountered someone who would then tell you that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, would you have taken this nazirus? Remember, it's not, is the temple standing or not? If you heard the temple, discover the temple standing or not, it's someone would have told you, is the temple standing, or the temple has been destroyed. Well, what's the difference there? Because it could be that the time is different. In this case, if the temple is already destroyed, right? So it was Nazirus, that's a Pesach. But if the temple, we just said, but if the temple is standing when he took his vow, so it would be. But one of the things he could have said, if someone then to come and tell him, if he would find out, from someone about this, would he have still taken the vow? It's not a t'nai on. It's not saying that if I had known that I had known of this, I wouldn't have done it, objectively speaking, but more of a subjective way of thinking about it. He says it's the Pesach is if when we're talking, someone had told him about this, for you to find out about it. Okay, that's his distinction. That's not nolad. That's yeah. So that's ironically, you go see the Rambam Paskins this way. I'll show you where to look at it. Oh, someone's waiting to come in. Okay. Either way, so we're almost there. Okay, we're almost to this point. So they say, wait a minute. Here's a kasha. What does it says? Rav Yosef says as follows. Okay, here's the Rav Yosef's problem. Okay, I'm Rav Yosef. Ihavi Hasom. If I had been there, when is Rav Yosef alive? Rav Yosef was mostly active in the 3rd century. I checked this. He died in the year 333. Rav Yosef the Amora. Now, Rav Yosef died 260 years after the temple was destroyed. Okay? What?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, Rav Yosef is well after the temple. So Rav Yosef has this idea. Okay, I'll tell you what he says. I'll tell you some Mefarish what he says, and why that's not necessarily what it says. It turns out that Rabbi Eliezer Minar says what I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you what Rav Yosef said. If I'd been there, I would have told them, there's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. It's in Jeremiah 10. Jeremiah is criticizing people. We've discussed this idea before, who were saying that the temple is basically their protection. Jeremiah is there prophesizing that the temple is going to be destroyed due to the people's sins. Mm-hmm. Some people were too reliant. There had been bad time where the Assyrian conquest, there had been plagues, famines. Yoel discusses going to the Beis Hamikdash and having fast days because there's these plagues of locusts just destroy everything. Mm-hmm. Read Sefer. It's kind of confusing. When was it? It was the first temple times. It's undated. Yeah, and it's like, oh, things have been terrible and just do tshuva. And he's obviously made first temple times. And sometimes there were wars and things got pretty bad. And now Yirmiyahu is basically saying this is the end. Temple will be destroyed. You're all going to Gullus. It's going to be terrible. A lot of people are going to die also. So what were people saying? We're saying, hey Hashem, worry about it. Things are going correct. That it's not Yirmiyahu Ted, it's Yirmiyahu Zion. Okay, here's the notes. Okay, don't be so trusting. Don't rely on the divrei sheker, these false words that say what? Heichal Hashem, Hema. This is God's house. What could happen to the house? So this is an allusion to the 3 temples. The 2 were destroyed, and the ultimate one that would not be. What does Rashi say? Okay, he says, "La no da amri de mish nazar lachar chur beis hamikdash inona mishum de inus kati havikoi." Okay, those who said that they're nazirim, because the Beis Hamikdash is still standing. I would have told them, don't you know it's to be destroyed? Don't listen to those false prophets who are telling you that this is to stand. It's actually doomed. Okay? They swear by God's temple. No bad shall come. Remember, false were saying that in your time. Don't worry about it. Things are going to be good. Okay, so they should have known there's temples are going to be destroyed, so the second temple is also doomed. It's Rav Yosef. If I'd been there, I told them I would have found the Pesach for them. The second was just he's the challenge the rabbis. Okay, the rabbi said a person took the Nazarite vow with the temple standing, it stands. His vow stands. And Rav Yosef says, I could have found a way to get him out of his vow. Even though the second temple standing, it's doomed. He knew it was going to be destroyed. Okay. So the Gemara answers, remember, it says, Rav Yosef says, first base of Mikdash, second base of Mikdash. And the answer the Gemara gives is, okay, even though the temple, they knew was going to be destroyed, but they didn't know when it was to be destroyed. Why would it have to be in their days? It was standing for centuries. Why would it have to be now? You know, that's some pretty hard times in Greek times. So, and it withstood the Greek onslaught, right? So it would get Roman times also. And then it says, it says this prophecy of Daniel. Well, it's not really a prophecy, it's not really one of the Nevi'im, but you could have calculated from Sefer Daniel how long the second temple was to be stand. It says Shvu'ayim Shiv'im, a weeks of 70, 6 times 70 basically. That's the maximum time. 6 times 70, 420, 420 years, at least according to Seder Olam. There are many who say starting with the Baal Mor, and everybody else says second temples for much longer. We discussed that also. So it says it says you don't know how to start Daniel's calculations. The calculations in Daniel with all those 70s and all that, you're only able to tell after the fact. The Chashiv Ketzim doesn't really work. So that's the basic understanding. They shown Rav Yosef is basically saying the second temple times they knew the second temple was doomed. And I had said last week, no, they didn't really have this Havamina like Rav Yosef has. Maybe the Mashiach could have come in first and second times. I mean, the Gemara even says that the Messianic era could have gone in first temple times, Chizkiyahu. So the advanced understanding is that the temples should be destroyed. Not like I read Rashi here and put into Rav Yosef. That's basically what the Rush says. They should have known 2 temples going to be dead, third temple will last. It's that they should have realized what Rav Yosef is saying, and this is, I think the better way to read it is that the temples could be destroyed. That's all. Time the temple's standing, who's to say that they're not going to sin and have destroyed? Right? There's no real place where it says there's going to be 3 temples. That's not a rule. Okay, it's going to be rebuilt when it will stand. But technically speaking, there have been 3 destructions. And I wanted to point out this Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hema. It's mentioned 3 times. If you read the continuation of this chapter in Yirmiyahu is telling them in first temple times, don't think that the first temple is invincible. You know why? Yes. And he mentions that again. Look what happened to Shilo. And by the way, Shilo was called in Sefer Shmuel what? Heichal Hashem. It says when Samuel was first contacted by God, it says that the light lamp of God had not yet gone out. Where? Heichal Hashem. Okay? So really, I think that the shot is the 3 times, 3 temples, 3 Heichaloth have been destroyed. Okay? Very explicit in the Torah, people forget about the Korban Shilo, which I was trying to emphasize in a bunch of shiurim last year. And that's basically the shot in the Gemara, that they should have known that any temple could potentially be destroyed. That's Rav Yosef's kasha. But not that they should have known that the second temple was a goner and doomed, and no chance that it would stand forever.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.